So from the lovely feeling that I'm now in, it's time for me to ask you to pull your weight on the show and answer a question from a listener. Would you two be willing to do that for me today?
I think we can do that, Sarah.
Give it a
So I actually love, so sometimes I seem to get questions that are maybe very, very similar, or I get one that, I don't know, just even then we're all kind of speaking to a similar thing in terms of where our experience is coming from, and that's ultimately at the root of all questions. But every so often I get one that just seems to be perfectly matched to the guests, almost too matched that it's going to be too easy, okay? But hopefully not. So I would love to ask you this, which came in the other day. Okay, so this is the person. I've been gently exploring the inside-out paradigm, which is what we've been talking about today. And I'm thrilled that my anxiety and insomnia seem to have improved, as well as my relationship with my wife. However, my workplace is atrocious, and my tolerance for the practices and attitudes is wearing thin. An example is the persistent expectation for overworking and a lack of respect for rest, thoughtfulness, and taking time to consider projects and decisions carefully. I realize the workplace I've described is thought created, but how does that help me in particular? Do I just know that these thoughts and carry on, or could I try and help change from within somehow? And if so, how? Or do I look to do something else entirely? Now, overlooking that they actually asked about 6 questions in one, we'll let you off. Where would you two maybe start pointing this listener in a direction to look?
Do you want to go, Michelle? I'm just curious. We haven't spoken about this.
No.
Really curious to know.
No conferring.
No. So I haven't thought about this, but what comes to mind to me listening is, first of all, that sense of, wow, what shifts and changes that they've seen. Phenomenal. And then, such pivotal areas. And I think when our sleep changes, so much of our world changes. Well, that's definitely my experience on a day-to-day basis. So that's incredible. And I think it's really normal. Well, at least it's been my experience that we see things in different areas. And then there's always other areas that we want to see more in. And so that's really kind of cool to say, okay, here's one area, my work, that I want to sort of explore a bit more and see a bit more around. I think there's a tendency with this understanding, or maybe a kind of misconception sometimes, for us to think that because it's all thought, we kind of hear that said a lot, it looks like, oh, well, that just means that there's nothing really out there that I can do, and all I've got to do is kind of work out my thinking and sort my thinking out, and then the world will change and everything will be fine. And it's like, wow, that sounds like I'm going to do a lot more thinking about my thinking to try and make this out here better. Oh, that sounds really tiring, and like I'm just going to feel even more kind of weighed down. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily the direction. But it's really cool that they see the thought created nature of experience. And that's huge. We can't underestimate the power of just noticing that. But it doesn't mean that there's not anything to do, I guess. And I think the more we see the thought created nature, the more we're able to cleanly look at our experience. So what's reality versus what's our thinking about reality? And where's that thinking on behalf of? Is it on behalf of the Michelle, in my example, of me and how I want things to be, or what this means to me, or what my fears might be around this situation? And when I can clean up what possible change there is for me, at that point, we're a lot more in reality. And then there's a lot more freedom, expansion, possibility of, well, what could I do? And we're not going to be able to know what an obvious step might be for this person. But I'm pretty sure there is an obvious step that will emerge. The more we get curious about it, the more we see that thought created reality, the more we kind of go underneath that, and we start to really see like my kind of anthropologist hat comes on of, God, I just get really curious about it. It's fascinating that this is my experience. How can I kind of navigate this? You know, what might feel a pull for me? And you know, there's loads of things that we could sit here and go, well, it could be this, and we could do this, we could do this. We don't know. We don't know what that is for that person. But we know that person's not alone. We know that this happens for lots of people. It's their experience, and we know that, you know, that means there's probably other people who are having these experiences within that organisation. So how incredibly helpful it could be to have some conversations about that, and the cleaner those conversations, the more ease, the more flow, the more possibility, the more freedom that exists.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And I had an inkling that Michelle might kind of pick up that anthropologist thread there, which is, but I think that's super helpful actually. And there's an element for this person to have a fresh lens on their organization. What's the opportunity, given what they've seen, which is amazing, to kind of use that to put some different work glasses on and to show up to work with a level of openness and curiosity, and to see what comes from that. I mean, we start the Pure Potential journey with research interviews. So we sit down with all of our explorers and just super curious about, what's your world like? You know, what's going on? And that's the opportunity for this person, given what they've seen. Could they come afresh at their workplace, you know, with a level of openness, you know, kind of less attachment, a loosening, a lightening on some of that language. I mean, atrocious is a very strong word by most people's definitions. So where's that coming from? You know, it's kind of curious to think about, isn't it? So yeah, if there's a loosening and a lightening of some of that meaning that this person is putting on the workplace, what might emerge from that? And tuning in day to day to that thought created experience, and particularly from the emotions. So which meetings do they go into where they really feel that emotional, I don't know, heaviness or dread, and, you know, to be with that and what is going on, you know, what is actually happening here in my experience. So definitely I would fully support shifting into anthropologist, curiosity, openness, a fresh look at this, you know, this hugely interesting landscape that this person is in at the minute. And then, you know, you do that for a bit and then see what happens. And it could be that the obviousness of that is then saying, for me, I'm shipping out, you know, and that's fine too.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've just made me decide anew that I'm doing this double guest thing all the time now, because that was just incredible. Like, I loved what you're both saying. And in fact, I had the thought, I was like, oh, I feel like I really want to go and get a job in a toxic workplace just so I can test this out, because I just felt that there was a lot in the question, and hey, I completely get that as well. But within the question, there was all these little sub questions, but I felt that the context of work could actually be applied to like family, to hobbies, to, well, the world, like anything. It's like, hey, I think I've seen something, but like, what about this over here? And if that's true, then what about these other little things? So I love the way that you both, in your own way, like kind of spread it out, and we were able to. That's why I'm glad I kind of asked it now after we've already talked about some of this stuff, because you illuminated some of the themes that we've already picked up on, like, well, what are like the benefits of even seeing its thought created, and then what, like, look at all this opportunity you have now, rather than these work questions you must solve, what's a label, and all the other things. So thanks, that was great. What I really loved was something that I'd not maybe heard in that way before, Michelle, that you said, like, is it thought or reality? And then if it's thought, I can't remember exactly, but like, on whose behalf or something you said. And I love that like framing, because it really got me thinking about something that I'm more and more interested in, which is like the history of our conditioning, and see this around ideology around like capitalism and gender and just all sorts of things, which I've found enormously freeing when it comes to some things that I've had and my clients have had, which takes us back to the understanding, like, well, of course you think that way because of blah, blah, blah experience or whatever, compounding effects over time. So it's like on whose behalf is this thought arising? I was like, capitalism or whatever, like whatever thing we've made up, that like collection of calcified ideas over time. But it takes us back to the understanding thing. If you understand that, like, oh, well, of course I think that, or of course I think, and then it gives you this freshness and freedom. So thanks for your gorgeous answer. I love it.